Welcome to the Metal Detecting Podcast, brought to you by XP Metal Detectors. We're digging the plugs and pinpointing the topics you want to hear. Now here's your hosts, Dave Kimball and Grant Hansen.
This show is brought to you by XP Metal Detectors. XP Metal Detectors is a high-end, innovative metal detector company with high-end metal detectors, coils, and pinpointers. For more information, go to xpmetaldetectors.com. For a dealer near you, try a Google search or go to xpteamusa.com. Hello and welcome to the Metal Detecting Podcast. I'm your host, Dave Kimball, coming to you from Central Oklahoma, and I'm joined today by my co-host up in the Northeast Coast, the great Grant Hansen. How you doing, Grant?
I am doing very well. It's good to be back. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I haven't talked to you in a long time.
I know. It took a nice summer off and spent time at home, a lot of time at home because nothing is open around here. But managed to make it through and got out detecting. It was a good summer. How about you?
Oh, yeah. I've been sitting around doing a lot of stuff, being busy, and yeah. And now finally get back on the podcast. We haven't been here for a while. We welcome everybody out. This is a new season that we're doing, and we got to take a long break, relaxing, got a little too relaxed, so it's kind of hard to get back into the swing of things.
Yeah, it's kind of that mentality. Once Labor Day hits, unofficial summer's over, and you got to start easing back into that workflow and the discipline. But it's all good. We're healthy and just looking to do some cool stuff.
Yeah, so I saw some of your shows that you've come out with. You did some pretty good YouTube videos.
Oh yeah, thanks. I've been trying to do a lot of videos. I'm releasing every Thursday morning at 8 p.m. Eastern, something new each week. I captured a great video of me and our guest tonight, Donnie Bailey, when we found some Revolutionary War buttons, which was really exciting. This week I've got a video out about some of the rain gear that I use and kind of do a demo and how it keeps me nice and dry in the torrential conditions. So trying to mix it up, hopefully provide some good, valuable, and entertaining content.
Yeah, I like how you're doing the demo on that. You put the kid to work, huh?
Yeah, my daughter was having a lot of fun with the hose, and luckily she didn't get the camera or anything like that, so we all survived.
You're not the only one to come out with a bunch of videos. We also have Lenny and Cameron, and of course Gary Blackwell has also come out with some new YouTube videos, so get on there and check them out. They're pretty good.
Yeah, Gary's got some really cool videos on programs. He just released a cool one on the Nautilus, which is an old school machine, so check that one out. And of course the Minnesota Beach Boys, they're always out there finding more gold than I'll ever see.
Yeah, I've been working and I'm going back to school and just been keeping busy. Just got through fixing somebody's metal detector and sending that back to them, and yeah, now we're back on this. Sounds
nice.
Good.
Hey, did you hear that Forrest Fenn died?
I seen that article.
It's kind of crazy. Not what is it? A couple of months after his treasure was discovered, which I know you're speculative about.
Yeah. I'm not a big conspiracy theorist, but I could be. Because you think about it, like in 2010, he hid the treasure, came out with this story, and everybody started searching for it, and then exactly 10 years later, somebody found it, and then like a few months later, he died. So
yeah.
I mean, did he ever really hide it? And he knew that he was dying, or did he tell somebody where it was because he knew he was dying and he wanted to see it found? I mean, I don't know. Yeah,
it just adds some more mystery to the story, and just even the fact that it was like 10 years after, kind of coincidence or what. No. I understand that they wouldn't want to give information on the finder because you've got to disclose all that stuff. Government will step in with tax probably. So I get that, but I'd like to believe it's true.
Yeah, hopefully it is true because I think a few people died actually looking for that treasure. So I mean, that would be really terrible if it was some publicity thing.
Agreed. Well, hopefully there's plenty of treasure out there. So I hope everyone has a good chance to get out and don't don't go too far to extremes and put your health at risk. But there's lots out there to find.
Oh, yeah. And as you mentioned, Donnie Baily being in some of your videos, check out them videos with Donnie Baily. And we are talking to him tonight. And we even mentioned on one of your videos with him hunting.
Yeah. So Donnie and I started detecting together probably 2 months ago. We've been chatting online for months and months. And I just said, hey, this guy seems all right. He seems trustworthy. I'll invite him off to a property. And, I said, look, I don't know if there's anything left here. I've hunted this left and right and up and down. But it's been a couple of years. I haven't been there, but we tried out. And wouldn't you know it, he finds a Continental Army USA button. What? And then I found a 7th Regiment button. So we were looking through old videos, and where we found those was covered in mulch before, and the mulch is all gone. So I didn't realize that I probably never went over that before.
All right. Well, when we come back, we'll talk with Donnie Baily.
We all know if you want to find good treasure, you've got to do research. HistoricAerials.com is one of the premier places to do that research. They've got the world's largest collection of United States historic aerial photos. You can compare pictures from year to year and see how topography and structures have changed over the decades. It's like having your own personal time machine. Make sure you're swinging your coil in the right places. HistoricAerials.com is free to use, but they also have subscriptions with awesome tools to help you track down treasure. Check out HistoricAerials.com. It's a real find.
Tonight we welcome a veteran in the hobby of metal detecting who has some amazing finds to share with us. Originating in Virginia and now residing in New York, let's give a warm welcome to Donnie Baily. How you doing, Donnie?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on the show. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. I'm very happy to have you on the show. I need to know, how did a Virginia boy like yourself relocate to New York, and why did you make that relocation?
Well, it's a classic reason. A girl. So I relocated to New York 10 years ago, and I love it up here. I love the history of New England. I'm a history nut. So, you're surrounded by history up here with the stone walls, the standing colonial homes. It's just, if you're a history nut, I think New England is the place to be if you live in the United States. And plus the pizza's pretty good too.
Yeah. You can't beat it.
Right.
And it's funny. Yeah. I feel like it's perspective, right? Because I'm in New Jersey and I'm always like, oh man, I wish I could get down to Virginia or the Carolinas and look for some Civil War stuff. And, so I guess, the fact that you've been able to enjoy both locations is pretty fantastic.
Yeah. I've dug basically all over the East Coast just about, because in my job, I traveled and, I still do. But, so I've been metal detecting in Georgia, Tennessee, Virginia, South Carolina, and then, of course, all over New England. Well, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, Rhode Island. So it's been great. I've been detecting for 24 years, and so that part of my job has been a bonus.
Oh yeah. So you mentioned your job. So you work for a coal company. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'm in sales, and I've been in sales since 1986. I worked at the mines before that, and so I got into the sales part because I thought it was an easy job. And now I sell metallurgical coal, which is coal that is used to make steel, silicon metal, ferrosilicon. It's actually used in the products, and so some of my coal actually this is something that kind of blows people's minds, is some of my coal is used in solar cells. Mm-hmm. So if you have, that's the green energy. If you have solar cells on your roof or at your business, the chances are some of my coal is in those solar cells because it takes silicon metal to make solar cells, and it also takes silicon metal to make computer chips. So buy new computers, please.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, that's the part of the coal business that I do.
Gotcha. And when it comes to the sales and delivery, I've heard last week that you had, for lack of a better word, or maybe a pun on words, almost a train wreck. So you tell people what happened last week and like how that affects your job?
Well, I was working probably 12, 14 hours a day last week. I had a train that was shipped to a steel mill, and this steel mill supplies the automobile industry in the United States consumes about 40% of the steel that's produced in the United States. So this particular steel mill supplies a lot of steel to the automobile industry. I had a train. We loaded a train, which is those are the things that block you at the railroad tracks and takes like 10 minutes to go by.
That's your stuff.
Yeah, that's our stuff.
You're the one to blame.
I'll know next time I'm in traffic, Donnie.
We use independent laboratories to check the quality, and the independent lab screwed up. They reported a good specification that was actually bad. So, the train, thankfully it was not rejected by the customer. It just made for a long week for Donnie. So, but it was, totally the laboratory messed up. It's an independent laboratory. They're worldwide. Everybody makes mistakes, but wish they hadn't made a mistake on my train. Yeah. And before I leave that subject, for the record, I hate going underground. My boss knows that I hate going underground. It scares the heck out of me. Some of our mines are 8 miles underground.
Oh, wow.
And I hate it.
Did y'all go down there by train?
Actually, we've got a Jeep Cherokee that's totally outfitted by the Mine Safety and Health Administration so that you don't poison yourself underground with fumes. But we take the Jeep Cherokee underground, and it's something to be going 50 miles an hour underground, bouncing around in that little thing. So I hate that part.
Yeah, that would be pretty creepy, I would think, especially after seeing all the stuff that's happened in mine collapses and all that in the world.
Yeah, we've got, probably should get off this subject, but we've got rescue chambers. We've got, everything. The government, the government controls the coal industry like no other industry. We have inspectors every day. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you work for General Motors or Ford, you may have an inspector once a year, but that's not the case in the coal industry. In the coal industry, you can't do anything unless the government tells you can do it. So
that was a pretty risky job. Let's talk some about metal detecting. Tell us about some of the campsites that you've detected in Virginia, and what are the conditions like there?
Well, I went on some of the paid hunts a few years ago in Virginia. I've actually been a metal detectorist for about 24 years. So I started out like everybody, digging in my own yard, and then I knocked on my neighbor's door and dug in their yard, and all my other neighbors, I dug in their yard. And so I actually spent the first 10 years, because of where I lived, it was basically a coal area, obviously. And so I dug coal camps. And then I got into Civil War digging because I had a customer that was a metal detectorist. He was a plant engineer at one of the plants that I sold coal to. So that was really great because I could take him digging and write it off on the company. So that was a great deal. We would go digging, once or twice a week, seems like. And then I had heard about the paid hunts in Virginia, so I actually went on those for a few years. They're great. It's a great time. There's probably 250 detectors there. Most of these hunts, I think, are held around Culpeper, Virginia. And the thing about Culpeper, Virginia is the soil there is unlike any soil anywhere in the United States. It's not like New England. It's not like Georgia or Tennessee or anywhere else. It's blood red. dead. It's highly mineralized. And to be successful hunting those, and these were winter camps around Culpeper. So they're winter camps from the Civil War. I think there was 50,000 men, 80,000 men spread out on these farms. And you've got farms that are like 5,000 acres. But the problem is, and the reason that the relics are still there, is because it's highly mineralized ground. And VLF machines struggle in that ground. Now that pulse machines have come out, everybody that goes to those hunts, just about everybody that goes to those hunts is using a pulse machine. And that's what I used. I used a pulse machine. But I only went to those hunts twice a year for a week at a time. And so for me, when I'm home in New England, I don't use a pulse machine. So it would take me a few days just to kind of get my ears tuned to. With the pulse machine, you don't have VDI. It's all sound, and it would take me a few days to get the sound in my ears for me to find stuff. So I actually don't enjoy metal detecting with pulse machine. And so after a few years, I kind of, I found a lot of stuff. I didn't find any holy grails at the paid hunts. But that ground, I actually pulled out a VLF detector down there and tried it. And I tried it in the woods because they say that in the woods, the ground is not as mineralized as out in the fields. And I tried it in the woods, and everything sounded like iron. Iron sounded like iron. Bullets sounded like iron. Buttons sounded like iron. I buried a bullet at 6 inches, and I couldn't hear it with the VLF detector. I took a bullet and buried it, and I couldn't hear it. So it's different. The guys that are good, that there are guys down there that they live there. They use pulse machines every day, and they're good with them. I know a couple of guys that are really great with those machines, and my hat's off to them.
Yeah, so whether you're using a pulse machine or a VLF, I'm going to struggle with that. Is there a strategy that you would take to hunting a campsite? Like, you're taking acres, right? Thousands of acres of fields and there's woods. Like, how do you try to find that spot that's going to work?
Well, they're working farms. The paid hunts in Culpeper, Virginia, Central Virginia, they're working farms. So there really is, and this is one of the things that I don't like about the part of the South that I dug in, is that there's really no connection to the past except for what's in the ground. So you're out in the middle of a field with, that they've harvested corn or soybeans, or they have cattle, and there's no, when you're out there detecting, the only connection you've got to the past is what you find in the ground. And for me, on those hunts, I just picked out the guys that I knew were good, and I followed them because I knew they'd find the good spots. So that was my strategy.
That's a good strategy.
So, yeah, follow the guys that know what they're doing. That's a good strategy.
Yeah. So how does that strategy work out for you? You've found some amazing stuff out there, right?
I found some good stuff. I found a lot of buttons. I found a lot of bullets. I found some really, really, really nice carved bullets, and I really like those. I found a carved bullet that's in the shape of a hand, which is really neat. Yeah, because these were winter camps, and the soldiers were bored, and so they would smash bullets and carve them. And now some of the carved bullets that they find at these winter camps are just they're little pieces of art. They're just art is what they are. The hand that I found is very crude, so this guy wasn't the camp artist, that's for sure. But those are some of my favorite finds because they're personal. They're personal. Somebody sat down in the camp. I think that these camps date to around 1863, and they sat down in the camp in the winter and carved chess pieces and bullets and gaming pieces, and then I've got the one where the guy carved a hand, and it's a hand.
Right. Pieces like that really give you a connection to the area. It really gives life to what you're doing. You actually find a piece of history that you can actually, put your hand on something that somebody actually carved out like that. I mean, that really gives a place more of a heartbeat.
It does. Now, I went on these hunts to try to find, the holy grails of Civil War metal detecting. And for me, and I think for most people, that would be an ID badge, which I think only the Union Army had ID badges. The soldiers would buy the ID badges, and some of them were silver. I've seen one gold one, but most of them were brass, and it would have the soldier's name on it so that if he was, God forbid, killed, that they could identify him. So I wanted to find an ID badge because that would be personal. That would be a personal. You could track him down and find out what happened to him. And then I dug Civil War sites for 10 years in Tennessee, Georgia, and Virginia, and I never found a Confederate button or a Confederate belt buckle. I did find a Union belt buckle and Union bridle rosettes and lots of Union buttons, including a New York Militia staff officer button. But I never found a Confederate buckle or Confederate button. I found hundreds of Confederate bullets, the Gardners, and there's, all the different ones that were Confederates, the Enfields and Gardners and 69 caliber mini balls. And, I've got all different types. They had so many different types of bullets. I don't see how they supplied the armies, but those were my white whales. I always wanted to find one, and I never did, and probably never will. So
aside from, doing the obvious and doing a paid group dig, what advice would you give to somebody who actually wants to do some research and find a campsite, and once they do, about going to get permission about that?
Well, the absolute best tool for finding Civil War campsites is a book that is called The Map. It's called The Maps to Accompany the Official Records. And at the end of the Civil War in, 1865, but I think they actually compiled the maps in 1866 or 67, sometime during that time period. The government gathered up all the maps that were made during the Civil War. And at this time, the armies had map makers. So they had actual map makers that followed the army or went out in front of the army and made maps for the generals, like Stonewall Jackson. If he needed a map of the Shenandoah Valley, I think his map maker's name was Hotchkiss. And so he would send his map maker out to make him a map because they couldn't go down to the gas station and buy a map. So at the end of the war, the government gathered up all the maps that they could find. A lot of the Confederate maps didn't survive, but they published those maps in a book. Well, they published two things. They published the official records, which was every scrap of paper, every order that was ever given by a commander to a unit or regiment. So that's called the official records. The official records are actually available on the internet now. You can Google them, you can find them, you can search them. Up until 5-10 years ago, you would have to spend a lot of money to acquire the books, and it's probably impossible to even acquire the books. But now they're online, so that's a great resource. The maps that go with the official records, those books, the book that I have, the original book that I had was from 1952, and then I bought a second book at a bookstore probably 10 or 15 years ago. So you can probably still find them in bookstores, maybe. But those are, there's 832 maps, I believe, in the books, and most of them are Union. There's some Confederate, but the maps are so detailed that you can take those maps and you can go to Dalton, Georgia, for example, and you can take those maps and you know exactly where the camps were at, where the battles were at, where their positions were at, where their pickets were at. You can look at that hill and you can say there was a Confederate picket post on that hill, and then knock on the door, and hopefully Farmer Brown will give you permission to go up on that hill and see what you can find.
So
yeah.
and once you find that spot, right? You've done your research, you've got the maps, and you're pretty certain that you found the property. How would you go about getting permission? What tips? And I think this is kind of universal to getting permission anywhere, but would love to know your approach on it.
Well, I've always found that, just be presentable. You don't want to show up at somebody's door wearing your, at least for me, wearing your digging clothes and carrying your shovel. So you want to, a lot of times what I would do is get permission first and then go back with my gear. But I wouldn't just show up knocking on the door, dirty hands and looking like I'd just been through a swamp, and ask for permission. And then I always found that it was better if you could catch people outside, because it seems as though people feel less threatened when they're outside. I don't know why. It does seem like when you knock on someone's door, they're a little bit more apprehensive of who is this guy at the door, and what does he want, and, maybe they think you're a salesman. Maybe they think you're an axe murderer. I mean, but it seems to me it's always better to, try to get them outside.
So how does detecting in the Northeast differ from the hot Virginia soil?
Well, I love detecting in New England. For me, the finds are so much older. The history is so much older than the Civil War sites that I just love it, because it's the history for me. And actually now, I know some listeners will probably not like that I say this, but the Civil War is kind of modern for me, because I'm all about the 1600s and the 1700s. So I don't have any desire to go dig Civil War sites anymore, unless somebody could show me where that Confederate buckle and Confederate button is. Right. Then I'll go dig a Civil War site.
And we'll be right back with Donnie Baily.
This segment is brought to you by Omega Mill Pouches, the official digging pouch of XP Team USA. If you're looking for a rugged, hunt-tested, washable pouch, look no further than Omega Mill. Get on eBay and search Omega Mill Pouches. That's OMEGAMILL.
Hi, this is Dave D.
Hi, this is Sonia.
R.C. Dunn.
This is Alan. We're the Minnesota Beach Boys.
This is David Kimball.
This is Grant Hansen.
Lynn Quelland.
Cameron Macer.
Pete Sorrell.
And we are
XP Team USA.
You're listening to the Metal Detecting Podcast.
And we're back with Donnie Baily.
Well, the 1600s and 1700s are definitely in the right part of the country, and you detect predominantly at cellar holes. It's getting harder and harder to find a fresh site out there, isn't it?
It is, and I have a very good friend of mine that actually said it best. Cellar holes are non-renewable resources, because if you think about it, once you take the relic or the coin from the ground at a cellar hole, it's gone. The beaches. The guys that I don't actually enjoy digging beaches. I've only done it a couple of times. But, the guys that dig beaches and are looking for gold rings and things like that, those sites are replenished every year.
Every day, sometimes.
But every day, yeah. And, but, cellar holes are not. So that's exactly why that I purchased my first dais last year. And I actually own two of them now. But the reactivity speed of the dais gives me an edge to find the targets that other detectors have missed, because it's very rare, extremely rare, to walk into a site, a cellar hole, colonial cellar hole, that's never been detected. That's very rare.
Oh yeah, especially nowadays with YouTube going on as a big popularity, is a lot of people. Yeah, I would see how it's pretty difficult to find one that's pretty much a virgin site anymore.
I've only been to one or two, so most of them have been hit repeatedly. And so you've got to have an edge. You've got to think outside the box.
Right. But there's not just the cellar holes, but also the journey to get there. There's quite a bit of hiking involved. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. We usually hunt, the guys that I hunt with, we hunt from like October to June. And so for me, I'll get up at 3 a.m. Because I've got a little bit farther drive than the other guys. I'll get up at 3 a.m. and then I'll drive a couple hours to get to the meeting point, and then depending on where we're at and what sites that we're going to hit, then sometimes there's maybe a couple mile hike, 2 miles, 2.5 miles. We may hike 5 to 8 miles in a day, hitting several sites. And so there's a lot of hiking involved, and a lot of good times, and a lot of long days.
Yeah. Are there any dangers or safety precautions people should take when detecting cellar holes?
Don't fall into a creek when it's the high for the day is 20 degrees, like somebody I know.
Do you want to share that story and out them, or is it keep their privacy intact?
Well, me and Danny LaMontagne, one of my digging buddies, we were out at a cellar hole, and we had to cross a creek, and the high for the day was like 20 degrees. It was freezing, and I don't remember if it was January or what month it was, but it was freezing. And so we had to cross a log to get to the other side, and Danny made it across first, of course, and then I fell into the creek. and this was early in the morning, like at 8 o'clock. So for the rest of the day, I was literally freezing. My feet were frozen. So I guess a good thing to have would be a change of clothes and a change of boots. Because after that day, I kept a spare set of boots in my truck. I guess that would be the thing I would say to take with you.
So you found a few holy grails as far as American finds are concerned. Can you please tell us a little bit of a story of the time you found the pine tree shilling?
Yeah, that's the best find that I've ever found in my life. And I found some good stuff, but that's one of those finds that you dream about. You don't really think that there's any possibility that you'll ever find one. At least that's the way I see it. I'd heard about pine tree shillings, read about them. And of course, after I found one, I've studied a lot more. So I know a lot more about it now than I did. But I was with Danny LaMontagne, and we were, just out detecting. I think it was the first hole of the day, I'm pretty sure. And so we went to this cellar hole. It was, obviously a 1600s cellar hole. And there's a difference. That's one of the things that Danny has taught me, is how to read the land when you're detecting colonial sites. There's actually a difference between 1600 cellar holes and 1700 cellar holes. And the difference is that the 1600s holes have collapsed for the most. They're more like round holes in the ground, whereas the 1700s holes are still square. They're still pretty square. They're rock lined and they're still pretty square. So this hole was one of the 1600s holes. It was very quiet. There's very little iron at the hole. We actually were there probably 2 or 3 hours. And at the time that I found the shilling, Danny was actually sitting on a log next to the cellar hole. He was eating lunch, and I don't think at that point either one of us had found anything, the way I recall. And Danny was, I'm sure he was probably thinking about the next site that we were going to hit. And that's when, on the edge of the cellar, I got the signal, and it was very loud. The coin was probably only 4 or 5 inches deep. Grant and I have talked about angles, and I hit it at the right angle. And then, I came into the cellar hole. I hit the coin at the correct angle.
Mm-hmm.
There was iron below it. There's iron above it. I just caught it. I caught it, and it sounded so good. I called out to Danny, and I said, this sounds good. So I dug it, and it sounded so good. I actually dug a plug that was probably 12 inches across. It did. It sounded, and I scratched a coin 24 years ago, and I don't ever want to do that again. So I dug this huge plug and flipped the plug over, and the coin's laying on the bottom of the plug, 4 or 5 inches deep. And I called out to Danny, and I said, I found something good. And Danny said, is it a shoe buckle? No, it's better. Is it a copper? No, it's better. What is it? I don't know. And so anyway, Danny came over, and I actually let Danny pick it up first. I could see the writing on it on the edge. I thought I knew what it was, but I let Danny pick it up, and then Danny looked at it and he said, pine tree shilling. And it's a no 16 pine tree shilling. That's the designation. It's not one of the rare varieties. There's probably 500, estimated 500 known to exist. But it's still a rare coin, even if it's not one of the rarest of the shillings. But here's an interesting tidbit that your listeners may enjoy. I posted the coin of course, I posted it on Facebook, but also posted it in some of the offline forums. And I was immediately contacted by one of the major coin auction sites that wanted to know if I wanted to auction the coin off. So there are people lurking in these sites. And this is one of the major, if I said the name, everyone would recognize the name.
Mm-hmm. What do you think the value of that is?
Probably 7 to 10. Somewhere around there.
I'm looking up.
I'll never sell it.
Yeah, I'm looking up some on auctions that are sold for $78,000, and I'm sure they're pretty pristine. But that's crazy.
Yeah, well, the ones that are 78 they're the rarer varieties. Mine is it's probably almost uncirculated. It was definitely probably saved, because that was a lot of money back in those days. And one of the things that the colonists did was they would spend their worn out coins and they would save their better coin. And this is definitely one of the better coins. So that was something that they would do back in those days. I think it was probably a piggy bank, because 12 shillings, a shilling would have been 12 pence. So that would have been 24 coppers, half pence. Mm-hmm. That was a lot of money, back in those days.
Yeah. And I actually had the pleasure of witnessing you find another holy grail to American detectorists, and that is a Continental Army button from the Revolutionary War. Tell us about the day that you found that.
Well, I owe that all to you, because I received a very, very gracious invite from Grant Hansen, from you, to detect a standing colonial home that is actually less than 20 minutes from my house. So I love that. I don't have to get up at 3 a.m. to go detecting. And I just got lucky. That's all you can say. I got lucky. I got, of course, you know exactly where I found it. In the front yard, right next to the street. Literally the street was 4 feet away, maybe. Yep. Next to a tree, next to a root of a tree, but the tree is obviously not of the same age as the button. So the button was there before the tree. The tree is old, but I think the button was there before the tree. So,
no doubt.
4 feet, 4 feet from the road. I had been detecting the front yard. And actually I got bored with the lack of target. And so I started working the edge of the property right next to the road, just trying to think outside the box. And yeah, I actually thought that I was going to find mostly trash, but maybe I would find something, mostly trash from cars throwing stuff, passing by. How people throw stuff out the window. But that's what I thought. I thought, well, I'm probably going to find trash, but maybe I'll find something good. And the maybe I'll find something good turned into one of the best days of my life.
Oh, yeah.
Because I found the button of all the buttons that I wanted to find, which is a USA Continental Army button, worn by a Revolutionary War soldier. Probably there's so many varieties of these buttons that it's hard to pin down, but I think it's probably an early, like 1777, 1778, based on the style of the button and the letters and things like that. But anyway, can't hardly even talk about it. It's I think I'm going to tell my wife that, when they send me to the great detecting field in the sky, bury me with that button.
Yeah, Grant, I'm going to say in about a year or so, I'm going to get a plane ticket and I'm going to fly down there and knock on your door and we're going to go detecting. I got to get down there.
You got to detect on the East Coast, and hopefully I'll take you to a good spot, because it's funny, this property that we were at, I've detected number of time over the years, but there's just so much in the ground that you can't exhaust it unless you dug it up and sifted the whole thing. So we were about 2 hours in, and I found like a ball button and some other good stuff, and Donnie hadn't found anything. So I'm literally at that point saying, "Oh man, he gave up golf to come detect with me today. I really hope he finds something." And then all of a sudden, he pulls this thing out, and I'll tell you, for the next hour, I detected right along the edge of that road.
Yeah.
That changed your strategy up there.
And rightfully, well, yeah. And I actually, I was hoping he would find one right there.
Well, I did find what I believe to be a 7th Regiment button about 4 feet from where you found your button. So I think we both did good that day.
Really nice.
That's true. He found a 7th Regiment button 5 feet away, which is 100 million times more rare than a USA.
Yeah.
So.
Oh yeah. So you're like many of us, you're a history lover. So what came first, the love for history or the love for metal detecting for you?
History. I've always been a history nut ever since I was a kid, and I would just read. I love to read history. My first exposure to metal detecting was my next door neighbor. We lived in Tennessee. My dad was an agent with railroad, and our next door neighbor was the first guy in the town that ever had a metal detector. And I remember I was 10 years old, or 8, 10, somewhere, very, very young. And I was sitting on the front porch of old man Charlie's house talking to Charlie. And I asked him, I said, I'm a kid. And I asked him, I said, what do you find with your metal detector? So he went in the house, he came back out, he had a Swisher Sweet cigar box, and he opened the Swisher Sweet cigar box, and inside the box was full of yellow gold class rings. Now that's the way I remember it. I was like 8 or 9, 10 years old, but I think the box was full. And I asked him, where did you find all those? And he said, at the football field. And of course, in the little town where we live, the football field had been there since like 1950. And of course, this was probably would have definitely been late 60s when I asked him this. So the football field had, probably been there for 20 years. And he's the only guy in town that had a metal detector. And so right then I decided, when I grow up, I want a metal detector. But the love of history has always been there. But I actually didn't get a metal detector until I was 35. And so that's the rest of the story as far as the metal detecting. But I always wanted to be an archaeologist. That'd be my dream job. I didn't pursue that because of money. But that's that's what I wanted to do, and so I do it a different way. I dig.
Yeah. So with summer winding down, what are your fall detecting plans? Got anything good lined up?
Just more of the same. I've got a couple of buddies that have found kettle points. And of course, you know what kettle points are. Those are they call them first contact relics. It's the Indians in I don't know about in the South, but in New England, the Indians would the colonists would trade with the Indians, and they traded all kinds of things. And one of the things they traded was brass kettles. They traded guns. They traded, of course, booze, but actually, booze was not as big as guns and blankets and kettles and axes and knives, things that you could use. That's what they really traded for. So but the Indians, being the frugal people that they are, when the kettle wore out, they didn't just throw it away. They made something out of it, and they made arrowheads out of them. And so today, people find kettle points. So they call them kettle points because they're made out of brass kettles, but they're arrowheads made out of brass that the Indians made, like in the 1600s, maybe early 1700s. I'm not exactly sure about that, but three of my friends have found them, and so they're trying to put me on a site where I can find them. Now the problem is that their kettle points, they ring up like shotgun shells. So if you can imagine, you're in the woods and you're digging shotgun shell signals. So you're digging thousands of shotgun shells, hoping that one of those signals is a kettle point.
Yep, it's target after target you have to chase after.
You have to chase. So I guess that would be my next goal. Is a kettle point or a 7th Regiment button. That would be cool.
Well, I know a spot that.
I know you know a spot.
Yeah. So I usually ask this question to everybody, but if you were ever given a 1-day pass to hunt anywhere in the United States that's always been off limits to metal detecting, where would you hunt?
Well, my answer would be Yorktown, Virginia. I would love to hunt where Washington basically won the American Revolution when he cornered General Cornwallis in Yorktown, and the British surrendered. And that does bring up an interesting point, and that is that all of these protected sites, for example, Grant's 7th Regiment button and my USA button, they're pewter. They are dissolving into the ground.
Right.
So all of the buttons, the pewter, there's a few brass buttons, but for the American Revolution, they're mostly pewter, is what I think. And so all of those pewter buttons at Yorktown are slowly dissolving underground, and and they need to be preserved, I think, for history. And actually, I do know of a couple of instances where the government has allowed metal detectorists to actually hunt protected sites and add to the history of whatever happened. And one of those was Custer's Last Stand. The government allowed the archaeologists and a team of metal detectorists. It's probably a local metal detecting club, but they allowed the metal detectorists to access to the battle site. The metal detectorists went out on the battle site. Anytime they got a signal, they stuck a flag down in the ground. And, then the archaeologists would come and dig up whatever it was. And what they ended up doing, there's actually a great video about this. The archaeologists, using forensic tools that are today, markings on bullets and casings and things like that, they actually figured out that, we were all taught in history class that, about Custer's Last Stand, and you see the paintings and the artwork of General George Armstrong Custer standing on a hill surrounded by his troops, surrounded by Indians, making his last stand. Mm-hmm. Well, what they found out from the metal detectors coming in and the forensics, which was totally interesting, is that there was no last stand. The 7th I think it was the 7th Cavalry. They were actually running for their lives, which makes sense. I mean, you're surrounded by, I don't know the numbers, but you've got 200 cavalry men and you're surrounded by thousands of Indians. You're running for your life.
Mm-hmm.
And, so to me, that is a great teamwork between science, between archaeologists, and between metal detectors, and we can help each other. And I think that's so cool. And, so my site would be Yorktown.
Mm-hmm.
I would gladly donate every USA button that I found to just, dig where George Washington stood. So there you go.
Good answer. Yeah, well, it was great having you on here.
Thank you,
Donnie. Hope you good luck on your future endeavors.
Well, I appreciate that. And I'd like to thank Grant because he made an old man's dream when he invited me down to hunt the standing colonial permission that he has. And so I just can't wait until the day that we're down there and Grant digs up a USA button, mm-hmm. and I dig up a 7th Regiment.
Right. Well, if it's there, we'll find it for sure.
We'll find it. There's still stuff there.
Yes, there is.
I mean, there is. It's
amazing. Thanks so much, Donnie. It's been great detecting with you and talking with you. And, let's get through fall, and you'll probably want to come back and share all the amazing stuff you found with us. So we'd love to have you back.
I hope so. Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Yeah, we'll see you.
Thanks, guys.
Check us out online at xpteamusa.com.
All right, we're back, and that was Donnie Baily. That was very interesting. Great interview.
Yeah, he's a great guy. And believe it or not, 2 weeks ago, we went back to the same site, and he found another Continental Army button. It wasn't complete. It was a fragment, but he found another. So that's 3 Revolutionary War buttons from a site that I had pretty much considered hunted out.
Wow. Yeah, and he was using the Deus, right?
He was, yeah, and he uses pulse tones, which I don't really use. So I'm gonna do a video on him and his pulse program and see what he does. He loves it.
Oh yeah, that'd be interesting. And I want to apologize a little bit on the during that interview. Halfway through, we started having some bad signal issues, so there was a lot of static in there. So I do want to apologize for that. Hopefully, our next one will not be like that. We'll get better recordings next time.
Well, it's still better than half the Zoom calls I have to do for work with bandwidth being, overmaxed everywhere because everybody's home. So I think we'll give you a pass on this one.
Oh, yeah. All right. Well, check out our YouTube videos. Check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And just look up XP Team USA and you'll find us somewhere.
Yeah, XP Team USA on all the social media channels. You'll find it. And check in on our Facebook page to find out when the next episode of In the Zone is on. That's R.C. Dunn and David D. Natale. They do a live video broadcast, I think, every other Tuesday night.
They were just out there at Detect the Heartland in Iowa, and they had a pretty cool time, looks like. They had a great tent out there. Their tent was huge.
It was. They had 3 tents set up. I saw that somebody won a detector, and they had a lot of fun out there. So maybe one of these years I'll get out there.
Yeah, they had a lot of giveaways. I even seen somebody post about them wearing an XP mask. That looked pretty cool.
Yeah, those are pretty nice. I was a little jealous to see those.
Yeah. Keep your eyes open and your ears open and find out where XP Team USA will be at next time, and hopefully we'll be near you.
Excellent. Yeah, definitely. And tune into our next show, which will be Friday, September 25th at 8 p.m. Eastern. We're going to have a great time.
All right. Well, we'll see y'all then.
Get that permission, put the coil to the soil, and we'll catch you next time right here on the Metal Detecting Podcast. Brought to you by XP Metal Detectors.